welcome. Despite the Veach mystery, which still looms over to this day, one thing we must consider is the possibility there are other missing hikers out there within the desert, whether it be the mysterious Eric the Hiker or the unknown hiker, in which a private search and rescue team in 2021 tried searching for them near Blackgate Canyon. A factor which has not been talked about much on this channel is the danger of weather, how it can impact and change the environment, but more importantly, the effect it can have on a human. Now, Jay Silverheels has covered it on his channel, as well as DJ. It's now time for me to give my opinion and have a little look at that. Hi, welcome. So yes, I will be using Google Earth for this one, as it's easier and clearer to explain with the topic I'm talking about. You can argue this is more on an amateur level because I've never covered this before or talked about it, so we'll just see how it goes, okay? And the main reason to why I want to cover this area is because it's a very valid factor. I mean, previously I talked about the terrain and environment of the place, the dangers of it, the steepness, uneven terrain, surface, the rocks, rock falls, the lot. So weather in its own right is yet another factor to take in consideration, especially to, in your mind, Veach, who was out there hiking, and in my mind, other missing hikers out there, such as that unknown hiker, okay? So let's just get into it right away. So we have the M Cave hike route on screen. Just as I talk along, it's easier to do so. We are facing north, okay? I just want to zoom in here because you see Blackgate Canyon, if we look this way, so what, east, I think. That's where that private search and rescue crew were up this way. Okay, they were looking around this area, I guess, up this canyon. I don't know why a missing person would be up there or what they're really doing. Do they have any ties with Veach? Were they looking for Veach or a cave? Who knows? And it was just up this canyon, I believe, on the side near the slope, round about here where that bone was found, which in the end turned out to be an animal femur bone, okay? Just wanted to include that in just in case you weren't aware of it. Let's just zoom back out. So, the weather. It all depends what time of the month you go, obviously, and that applies to really anywhere within the world. But if we're talking about a desert, just in general, the temperatures are going to be more extreme compared to, you know, a normal, everyday populated place, like just such as a city. You know, in a sense, you can still apply it here. There's a difference between temperatures in this area as opposed to being within the city. Now, one thing Jeff Clark did say himself was there can be differences in temperatures. So I can't remember which way round he said it. I'm not sure if he was referring to on lower ground within the desert compared to higher ground in the mountains, or if he meant within the desert as opposed to further back near to the city. But regardless, he said there's about a 30 to 40 degree temperature difference. So that can have a massive effect, obviously. So, you know, there's different temperatures. I mean, one thing I've did hear about in the past, especially when, whereabout was it? It must have been some of the canyons or so. Could it have been this one? Yeah, yes. Yeah, this one. So picture canyon, okay? I remember when people were talking about what, the wash, or when there's a monsoon. I might be wrong in saying all that crap, but people were definitely saying when you had heavy rainfall and weather's temperature, heavy rainfall, storms such as that, the water that goes through here and passes through, and how it can hide things, or it can reveal stuff, move things away. Does that make sense to you? It's just because I remember in one of the hike videos, I can't remember who it was probably Sean's, when he was going through Picture Canyon, and as he was getting further down, he was like looking on the side, and you could see like very maybe shallow caves, but the caves like very low to the ground. And I'm sure he was saying something like, but different time of the season, a different month, it washes it all away, and it might reveal more than what it does now. Does that make sense? Okay. One thing I just want to throw in very quickly, as with temperature and the environment, as we know, we don't have coordinates for the location Frank was at. It was somewhere near the highway, or it was along there and then off in the distance somewhere. But that cave, that M-shaped cave Frank found, and within that Area 51 sign, down the line, some people came out with that idea of maybe because of weather, the wash, heavy rainfall, whether it's on a slope or upstream, uphill, it might have washed it along the way and then it collected inside the cave, hence why it was kind of like buried under some rubble and vegetation. So that could well be a possibility. So, I just thought I'd just add that in here, since we're talking about weather. It makes sense, doesn't it? So yeah, you've got heavy rainfall at times. There it might be a hot place and it can be very hot at times. You can get the extreme opposite as well and stuff like that. Another point I want to add in, because I do remember it, might as well. Like how people have said about wildlife, how it can be dangerous, how it could catch up with people, mountain lions, snakes. Jeff Clark had a close encounter with, was it a rattlesnake, I think? He nearly sat on it or something. People have said maybe that's what happened to Kenny Veach. Well, it depends the time of the season and it depends the weather, because once again, what Atari said in the past was like some drought. There wasn't any water. It was very dry within the area. Well, that's obviously a risk towards humans who are out there if they don't have enough water. So yes, that's detrimental to one's survivability. But it's what Atari was saying, how the wildlife, such as mountain lions, were actually leaving this area because it was so dry, there was virtually no water, and they were actually making their way into, I guess, the city or part of a neighborhood. And I'm sure Atari said where she lived at the time, there was a mountain lion within the neighborhood walking around, roaming, looking for water or food. So that's quite interesting. And it kind of makes you think that if wildlife that actually lives there in that environment with that sort of weather, if those are actually migrating, moving away at a point in time, then it really does, in a bold way, highlight how harsh it is out there. It's true though. But it also makes you think, well, if that's the case, depending what the weather was like at the time, I can't remember what the weather's like or the temperature is during November. I guess it can vary. People that actually lived there or been there will know, and they can leave a comment down below because they'll know more, obviously. But let's say if it was hot, I'm just using that as a rough example. Let's say it was a bit hot, very dry and everything, wildlife moved away. Well, there's not as much danger, is there, to Kenny Veach or another hiker out there. The mountain lions have gone elsewhere, then you're not really going to be as in much danger as you were originally. So you could argue that rules that out. But as I said, I don't really know how the weather works there because I'm not from there. I know DJ, I think he's some kind of, what was it? I don't know, just like maybe different software or something to track the weather. I'm sure I could as well, but maybe I'll do that in a future video if necessary. So anyway, regarding the temperatures, yes, it can be hot and it can be dry. Well, it will be because it's a desert type area. Just like any desert around the world, it can be very dry, it can be very hot. So it's one of those things, when it's hot, it's hot. But then equally, when it's cold, it is cold. Is it the Sahara Desert? Rough place and stuff in terms of trying to survive out there. But like when it gets to midnight, when it gets dark, it gets very cold out there. So I guess the same happens here. It's one of those things where, as for clothing, as for hiking, during the daytime, you might wear thin layers, I guess, maybe short sleeve top and some other types of material. But then when it gets later on and very cold, it could impact you in a negative way. And this is tying it on with what Jay Silverheels said, okay? So depending where you are, if we reapply what Jeff Clark said about the 30 to 40 degree temperature difference, and we link that and apply that with Jay Silverheels talking about a cold trap, it is very possible that a hiker could get caught up in it and not be prepared and be impacted negatively, and it could be fatal. So let's just do a little practice thing. Person could go up Joe May Road, get out, and then head north. Just use that default route, okay? Head north, going up here. And as you can see, just from this angle, there is a slope, is there not? I might be wrong, but just from what I can see on here, there is a slope. And you keep on, you keep following that up, okay? And then obviously on the sides, you've got other canyons which go higher up in elevation, altitude. You got those steep slopes and rocks and cliffs and edges. Yes, there we go. I can't get it now. See, this is all done on the spot, okay? So I'm learning as I go along. Once you get to Wild Horse Pass, you kind of at one of the highest points. Not in terms of mountains, because you got all up there, but Wild Horse Pass, if you just hover on the edge of it, and you've seen it in Aqua Chugger's video, and I'm sure Jay Chuck's, you're overlooking, would you call it a valley? Or you're overlooking, the land ahead. And it is kind of high up because it goes back down. It's up and down. If we just rotate and look the way we came, look, it's on quite a bit of a slope. There's a gradient, okay? And that kind of ties in with that. If you're on lower ground, further down back that way, it might be quite warm and quite hot, especially if you're not in the shade and you got the sun, obviously. But then once you make your way up to Wild Horse Pass, the temperature might change. You know what I'm saying? It might get a bit cooler, a bit colder maybe. Not extremely, but you might notice it. And then if you go over Wild Horse Pass, you're going back down to lower ground. So does it get hotter again? Can the body cope with the change? I mean, on a very small scale, especially if the weather's not too bad, then yeah, it would make sense. It can happen. Just like how, what would be a random example? Just like how in a short space of time, if you 1 minute were outside playing around or doing exercise and it's a hot sunny day, yeah, you feel it. You feel uncomfortable, you feel warm, you feel the pulsating, radiating heat. And then let's say next minute you suddenly jump into an ice bath, your body might go into a little bit of shock and it's like, ooh, you noticed a change. It's a sharp change. It's quite harsh. But because it's only a short amount of time you're doing it for, and it's not any more extreme than that, then the body can, it can handle it. But if you're in an environment like this, where it's extremely hot and it can also become extremely cold, and you just so happen to experience both of those on the same day, and it's like from one change to another, then you can be in trouble. And maybe it applies more to do with Sheep Peak, where you're higher up. I mean, a perfect example would be Mount Charleston. I don't know where it is on here, because I haven't jotted it down, but someone will know. It's obviously high up somewhere. And with Mount Charleston, it can be quite snowy. You can see snow on like the top of it. And I think that's what Jeff Clark was getting at, how you could be maybe within the desert or outskirts of Las Vegas and you see in the distance, despite it being very hot where you're stood, in the distance you see all the snow on the mountain tops, etc. And I can even apply it here in this country. Days where it might be kind of cold but not extremely, And yet, if you've got a good view and you're out somewhere and you look ahead and you see in the distance, like the countryside area, and you see the hills and mountains, farmland and stuff higher up. It's very snowy. It can be a bit bleak. It can look like it's raining over there. It can look very cold. So it's universal again. And it's true how higher up it can be colder. Yeah, I get it. I do get it. I mean, aside from temperature, you can also think of the altitude levels. The higher up you are, sometimes it can be harder to breathe. Is it the Andes or is it Mount Everest? You want to apply it to that. It can affect your oxygen levels and breathing, so that can impact your health and survivability. So there is a lot of valid points to take into consideration, okay? Hopefully it's clear enough and you can understand what I'm saying. As I said, it is kind of amateur this, so might not be the best. Let's apply it to Kenny Veach though, because as he said, he's been up Sheep Peak, he's been all over the place. So on the off chance, he could have gone up one of the canyons, maybe this one here, opposite Joe May Gusler. Okay. Actually, has anyone been up that canyon? I don't know. It's just when I look at it, it looks quite accessible. You know what I'm saying? It's quite wide, the entrance of it. Let's just go up it because I don't know if I've looked up this way before. No, there's a bit of a problem there. It looks very, very steep, to be honest. It looks almost inaccessible. I might be wrong. Yeah, you have to tell me if anyone's been there. Hold on, it's malfunctioning. Regardless, if Kenny Veach was up here at a certain point in time, preferably his final hike, and he was up here for whatever reason, it could well be very cold. I mean, am I correct in saying there is snow up here? I'm just looking at the white stuff. That has to be snow, right? Well, I hope it is, because what else is it? But this is what I'm getting at. The reason why it's white up here is because it's higher up and obviously colder. And lower down, it's a bit warmer, so you're not getting any snow down here, but you are getting snow and ice up this way because it's higher up. So there you go. There's some real-time appliance. Oh, you can see it all over. So, Kenny Veach could well be up here, wearing certain clothing, maybe. I'm not quite sure. Get off. And then at some point he makes his way back down to lower ground and it's like really hot all of a sudden. It's like, oh my. Let me just try something. Where is it? Where's the mine shaft? Jesus Christ, where's the mine shaft gone? Okay. So, well, it's within this area. I think it's that area here. So, you know, if people are still fixed on the idea about Kenny mainly, that he left his items there and he might have changed clothes. Where did his clothes go? I don't know. Maybe put them in his backpack, rucksack maybe. And then, okay, he changed clothes, but why? Is it because of the weather, the temperature? Maybe because it's hot. Okay, we'll go along the lines of that. Changing clothes because of the temperature. And then maybe he goes up and over and then feels the change, or he goes elsewhere, goes higher up, and then he realises the cold and his body goes into shock and, dies of hypothermia or something. And because of where he's at, he's not going to be found. Yeah, that's what Jay Silverheels was getting at some point. I understand that. Yeah, I do. And in my opinion, it can just very well apply to a missing person out there in general, but more specifically either Eric the hiker or that unknown hiker out there. Same could have happened to them. That's the way I say it at the end of the day. I do acknowledge the terrain and environment itself is harsh, and then you add in the weather, how it can be one extreme to another. And if given on the same day you experience both sides in a way, your body might not be able to cope with it. I think that's the best explanation I can give at this moment in time. So hopefully that was clear enough to understand. I was doing it as I was going along, 'cause it's the first time I'm doing it, so it tends to be a little bit more rough around the edges and a bit raw, like how it originally was. To new viewers and impetuous people, there'll be a bit of unrest and people will complain and criticise me, but there we go. Oh well, tough shit. But I just wanted to cover it because it's a very valid factor to take in mind, and you don't have to apply it to Kenny Veach because there are potentially other people out there, so it can apply there. And I'm sure people who have actually been there themselves and live near or within the area can give their own opinions and clear up any mistakes or errors made in this video within the comment section. It can be all sorted, okay? So I think that basically sums it all up, okay? The next video might be a non-related one, okay? But I will return back to Google Earth, the maps, because I need to check something out, okay? And I'm going to use Google Earth Pro next time, okay? So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.